Last summer was a good one for pool parties in my friend circle in Akron. Everybody seemed to have access to somebody's apartment complex pool or a backyard setup. And between May and August, I probably went to 6 or 7 separate get-togethers across groups of people who mostly didn't overlap. College friends, work friends, a cousin's crowd, people from my old neighborhood. A normal summer, plenty of pools, plenty of hosts. The first time I noticed him, it was at a friend's apartment complex pool in early June. A small gathering, maybe 15 people, mostly folks I knew well. There was a man on the edge of the group I didn't recognize, sitting in one of the pool chairs a little apart from everybody, not swimming, nursing a drink, just hanging around the edges the way somebody's plus one does at a party where you don't know everyone personally anyway. I didn't think a thing about it. Parties have people you don't know. That's just how parties work. Second time was a whole separate situation. A friend group with no overlap to the first. A completely unconnected apartment complex on the other side of town, early July, celebrating somebody's promotion. I noticed him again, sitting in almost the exact same posture. Pool chair, drink, a little apart from the main group. I clocked him as familiar looking but didn't immediately place him, the way you sometimes think you recognize a stranger's face from somewhere ordinary, a grocery store, a gas station, nothing significant. It wasn't until the third time, a whole other pool, a small backyard gathering thrown by a cousin of mine for the 4th of July, that I actually placed him and felt something shift in my stomach. Same man. Third party, third host, 3 separate friend groups that as far as I knew had no connection to each other at all. I want to be fair about how I processed this in the moment, because the honest first read isn't far off from what any reasonable person would land on. Akron isn't a huge city. It's entirely possible for the same person to run in several social circles, to get invited to parties all summer through connections nobody thinks to mention. I told myself that was almost certainly what was happening. Some guy who knows a lot of people, gets around, shows up to parties the way certain personality types just do. I actually asked my cousin about him at that 4th of July gathering, casual, not wanting to make it a thing. She looked over at where he was sitting and said she didn't know him, thought he'd come with somebody else's invite. Assumed he was a friend of a friend the way you do at a big backyard party where nobody's checking a list at the door. Nobody had invited him. Not at my cousin's party. Not, as I found out when I quietly asked around afterward, at either of the first 2 parties either. He was, by every account I could gather, a stranger at all 3 gatherings who nobody there had personally brought or vouched for. That should have been the point where I did something more than just notice. I'll be honest that it wasn't. Summer parties are loose, casual things, and I told myself that some men just have the social ease to slide into gatherings uninvited without anybody making a fuss about it, and as long as he wasn't bothering anybody, wasn't drinking too much, wasn't doing anything that crossed the line, it felt like more trouble than it was worth to make an issue out of a stranger sitting quietly at a pool party. The 4th time changed that completely. Mid-August, a work friend's apartment complex, a going away party for somebody transferring cities. New pool, new host. A guest list that had nothing to do with any of the previous 3 parties, as far as I could tell. Work friends, no overlap at all with my cousin's crowd or my college friends or whoever had known him at the second gathering. He was there, same posture, same quiet presence at the edge of things. I left that party a little earlier than everyone else, maybe around 9:30, tired from a long week, and I walked to my car in the complex's parking lot without thinking much beyond wanting my bed. He was standing near my car, not blocking it, not doing anything you could point to as aggressive, just standing close enough that it registered immediately as wrong, in the specific way your body understands wrong before your mind fully catches up to why. I stopped walking. He looked at me, and for the first time all summer across 4 separate parties, he actually spoke to me directly. He said my name. I hadn't told him my name. Nobody at that party, as far as I knew, had any reason to have introduced us, because we'd never once spoken across any of the earlier gatherings. He said it plain, no question mark on the end, just a statement, like he was confirming something to himself as much as addressing me. I didn't respond. I got my keys ready in my hand the way you're taught to, and I walked wide around him to get to my driver's side door, and I got in and locked it immediately. And I watched him in my rearview mirror the entire time I was backing out of that spot. He didn't follow. He just stood there, watching me go. The same quiet presence he carried at 4 separate pools across an entire summer of parties that had nothing in common with each other except, apparently, him. I told my friends after that, all of them, across all 4 circles, comparing notes for what felt like the first time all summer. Every single person confirmed the same thing. Nobody had invited him, nobody knew his name, nobody could account for how he ended up at their specific gathering. I haven't been to a pool party since that ended without me checking, before I even walk in, who invited who. I ask now, straight out, if there's anybody at the gathering that the hosts themselves didn't personally invite. Most people think I'm being a little paranoid about it. I'd rather be paranoid than stand in a parking lot a 5th time, finding out he's learned something else about me that I never told him. I threw my son's 7th birthday party at my sister-in-law's place in Albany last month. One of those backyard above-ground pools that's become the whole neighborhood's summer hangout. Normal party, cake, water guns, a dozen screaming kids having the best day of their summer. About 45 minutes in, one of my son's friends came running up, insisting there was another kid in the pool who wasn't part of the party. I did the head count, every invited child accounted for, nobody extra visibly there, and told him he probably lost track of who was who. 20 minutes later, a different kid said the same basic thing, same head count, same result. The 3rd time, it was my own son. He came to report, not upset, that the extra boy in the pool was really good at holding his breath and asked if we could invite him again because he was fun. I asked him to describe him, mostly to humor it. My son said a little older than him, short hair, a gap between his front teeth he thought was funny. My younger brother, who I lost when I was 15 and he was 11, before my son was ever born, had exactly that gap. I've never had a photo of him displayed in my home. My son has never seen his face, doesn't know what he looked like beyond the plain fact that he had an uncle who passed young. I asked if the boy had said anything. My son repeated it back with the complete unconcern kids have when they don't understand the weight of what they're carrying. He said the boy told him, "Tell your daddy, I still know how to hold my breath the longest." My brother passed in a lake accident the summer he was 11. I picked that shallow above ground pool for my son's party, specifically so I'd never have to think about the thing I usually can't help thinking about near deep water. I didn't tell my son who the boy might have been. I told him some kids see things other people don't, and left it there. I figured that was the end of it. One afternoon, one pool, a message I didn't know what to do with. I told myself it had to be tied to that specific yard, that specific water, maybe some echo of a family gathering held too close to old grief. 3 weeks later, we went to a friend's pool for a completely different occasion. A 4th of July cookout clear across town, a pool my son had maybe visited twice before in his life. Nothing connecting it to his aunt's backyard except that kids were swimming in it. My son came and found me partway through the afternoon, calm, matter-of-fact the way he'd been the first time. He said his friend from the birthday party, that's what he called him now, his friend, was here too, and asked if that was okay, since it wasn't his own party this time. I felt something go cold in my chest that had nothing to do with the pool water. I asked my son to describe him again, needing to hear it a second time to be sure I hadn't imagined the first. Same gap tooth, same age, same short hair. My son said he was glad to see him again because he'd missed him. Different pool, different yard, different city block entirely. Nothing physically tying the 2 locations together except my son standing in the water at both of them. That night, putting my son to bed, he told me something that I still haven't fully found my footing under. He said his friend had come inside with him after they got out of the pool that afternoon, followed him in through the back door while everyone else was still outside, walked with him all the way to the bathroom where my son had gone to rinse off, and kept right on talking with him the whole time nobody else was in the room. I asked what they talked about. My son said mostly regular kid stuff, but that right before he left, his friend told him he'd see him again soon, and that next time he wanted to show my son something he used to do down at a lake a long time ago. I did not sleep much that night. I sat in the hallway outside my son's room for a long while, doing something I'd never done before and haven't fully explained to my wife, which was talking out loud into the dark of the house to my brother by name for the first time in 20 years. I told him I understood he wanted to be near his nephew. I told him I wasn't angry and I wasn't going to hide that I was shaken, but that there were things I needed him not to show my son and places I needed him not to follow us to, and that a lake was one of them. Nothing answered me. No cold spot, no voice, no sign at all that anybody was listening. I felt foolish sitting in a hallway at midnight negotiating with an empty house. But we haven't been back to that friend's pool since, and I've started paying closer attention at every gathering my son goes to now, not just counting the kids I invited, but asking him afterward gently whether his friend came to play again. He's mentioned him twice more since that 4th of July, both times at pools I hadn't taken him to before, both times describing the same gap-toothed boy who apparently doesn't need an invitation to know where my son will be. We still have pool parties. I'm not going to build the same fear into my son that I've carried for 30 years over an accident that was never his to inherit. But I count twice now, every single time, at every single pool, no matter whose backyard it is. Once out loud, so every invited kid hears their name, and once quiet, just for me. Last weekend, at my sister-in-law's again, I did the count. 7 kids, same as her invite list, clean number. I actually let my shoulders drop for the first time in weeks. Then, loading coolers into my truck to leave, one of the other mother's daughters tugged my sleeve and asked, completely calm, the way kids ask anything, "Who's the boy getting in your truck?" I looked at my truck. My son was already inside, buckled in, alone, exactly where I left him. I didn't answer her. I got in, checked my mirrors twice before I pulled out, and I haven't stopped checking them since. I've worked maintenance for the Parks Department in Meridian going on 16 years, mostly at the pool 2 streets over from where I grew up. Every summer, at least once, a kid at a party tells a parent the same kind of thing. There's a man standing in the shallow end, not playing, not swimming, standing. When the lifeguard looks, nobody's there. 3 summers ago, a girl at a birthday party told her mother the man had said something to her. Quiet, gentle, the way you tell a kid something you needed them to remember. This used to be mine. I walked her and her mother to the shallow end myself. Empty, obviously. Kids splashing around like nothing had happened, because for them, nothing had. That line stuck with me longer than any of the other reports had, because it wasn't vague the way kids usually are about what they've seen. It was specific, possessive, a grown man's sentence, not a monster's. I called my uncle that night, who worked parks and rec before me. I told him what the girl said. He was quiet a minute, then told me something I hadn't known. The pool sitting there now was built in the early 90s. Before that, this same ground held an older pool, drained in the 60s rather than integrated, same as plenty around the South did that decade, sat empty a long time before the city finally filled it in. His own father had done informal upkeep on that first pool back when it was open, the kind of unofficial groundskeeping arrangement that existed in a lot of places back then, where somebody black kept a facility running that he himself wasn't fully welcome to use. This used to be mine made a different kind of sense after that. I figured that settled it. A patient presence tied to a patch of ground, showing up for kids who happened to be standing on it. I kept doing my job, kept half an eye on the shallow end, and let myself believe the location was the whole answer. Then, this past spring, a family who'd been regulars at our pool for years. I knew their 2 girls by name, watched them grow up coming to our Saturday parties. Mentioned something to me that took the where clean out of the explanation. Their older daughter had gone to a birthday party at a different rec center pool entirely, clear on the other side of Meridian, a facility with no connection to ours that I know of, built on land that's never been anything but a parking lot before it was a pool. The mother told me, almost as an aside, that her daughter had come home talking about a man standing in the shallow end there too. Same description, standing, not swimming, looking down at the water like he was checking something. I asked what he'd said to her, if anything. The mother said her daughter told her he'd said her name first, before anything else. Used it plain, the way you greet somebody you already knew. And only after that had he said the same line I'd heard 3 years back at our own pool. This used to be mine. I sat with that for a long time, because a patch of history tied to a patch of ground is one thing. A man who knows a specific child's name at a pool built on land that never held anything before is a different thing entirely. And it meant whatever this was had stopped being about where and started being about who. I started paying closer attention after that, not just at our pool, but asking around at the handful of other facilities across the park system. Casual, the way you check in with people you've worked alongside for years. Two other maintenance men at different sites told me, once I asked directly, that they'd fielded similar reports over the past couple years and never thought much of it. Figured it was the usual kid at a pool stuff, same as I once had. What none of us had compared until that spring was whether it was the same descriptions, the same words, the same specific children hearing their names used first. Once we laid it side by side, it was. I don't have a clean way to explain a presence that isn't tied to one plot of ground anymore. That's learned specific children's names, that's shown up at 3 different pools across a city, that share nothing physical in common except that families move between them. Same kids swimming at different birthday parties throughout a summer. The only thread connecting all 3 sightings was the families themselves, not the ground. I went looking for that first family's older daughter myself, the one who'd heard her name at the other rec center. I found her at our pool the following Saturday, at another party, and I asked her, gentle as I could, trying not to scare her worse than she already might be, whether she'd seen the man again since. She said yes. She said he'd been standing at the edge of our shallow end that very afternoon, before I'd even started my rounds, and that he told her something new this time. Not this used to be mine. Something closer to a question. She said he'd asked her if she remembered him yet. I don't know what he wants her to remember. I don't know if he's following her specifically, or if she's just the one who's noticed him enough times to keep reporting it back to grown adults willing to listen. I've started doing something I never used to do, which is quietly track which specific kids across different parties mention seeing him, at our pool and at the others once I hear about it, comparing notes with the other maintenance crews the way none of us thought to before. I haven't told that mother everything I've started to suspect. I don't know what good it would do her, watching her daughter for a pattern none of us can prove and none of us can stop. What I do know is that I still keep half an eye on the shallow end every single Saturday, same as I have for years. But I watch the kids now too, especially the ones who've been to more than one of our sites, because I've come to believe the ground was never really the thing holding on to anybody. It was always about who kept showing up on it.